Welcome, everybody. This is John Zager, and this is another video in the series that I'm doing on self-healing. I'm going to try to get this camera figured out a little bit better for you, or not. Maybe it won't get better. I'm not sure, but I'll try to get through this in a somewhat expedient manner because I've always been running pretty long. So a little bit about myself, as I always do in each of my presentations. 38 years clinical psychology. That all stopped in 2008. I stopped seeing clients, I guess is what it was. After that, I've started doing research in neuroscience, psychology, around self-healing. And I've done that for the past 5 years. This is a series on self-healing, and there seems to be a lot of presentations going on right now and research in that area around people through thought alone not having or curing or getting rid of cancers and diabetes and hypertension and various other kinds of diseases that they may have. There's a lot of prominent doctors and researchers out there that have been doing scientific investigations, and there's quite a bit of research and case studies on the internet. Most everything that I'm talking about comes through them, of course, and through the internet and what's public, and my continuing search to learn more about this whole thing. So it can all be documented and looked up in that manner. Where I vary from the presentations that are on the internet now is that my background is mental health, 38 years, and probably 43 years of mental health, having treated a wide variety of people. And I don't know, I guess if you can, through thought alone, cure, remove, no longer have terminal illnesses and sicknesses and that kind of thing, then I guess what I'm working on is, why can't you do the same thing with mental health issues? I'm starting off with my research just being around depression and anxiety. The second half of my video presentations each week, and I think this is number 4, but the second half of my presentations are about my progress. I have hypertension, so I'm trying to follow the outline given to me on the internet, watching these different workshops and lectures and presentations on how you go about getting to that point to where you can eliminate, for instance, in my case, hypertension. I believe that the drugs that they're given today the side effects are worse than the hypertension. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an MD. So this is my opinion, but having taken medication for years for hypertension, I can tell you it's devastating and terrible, the side effects that you can encounter. So this is my attempt to do that. Remedy not taking medication, get rid of hypertension through thought alone. Okay, and I don't know. I guess we're going on and on each week with trying to make more progress, and I'll report on that towards the end of our presentation. I did take some notes and I put them down on my phone, so I'm going to be referencing to that periodically. But today what we're going to do is a short little presentation just on personality and how things like that transpire and transform into recovery and self-healing. So a lot of this stuff you already know as lay people, but I'm going to go back through it. And if you ever have any questions or anything, subscribe to my videos, please, by all means, or email me. I'll give you my link at the end. I guess it doesn't matter now. It's just jzegar@gmail.com, JZEGAR@gmail.com. So our personalities are formed by the age 3, 4, somewhere in there is what they basically talk about in psychology, developmental psychology, child psychology. And a lot of that is formed by the child in the mother's womb and the personality that she may have. And so there's a lot of characteristics and traits that are learned behavior before the child is even born. And the first 3 years, very impressionable, and again, through environment and modeling behavior of the parent or parents' surroundings, the personality is kind of formed. What they say is that personality, the way you think, act, and feel, personality, that's what that is not changeable. That's what they used to preach. Okay. With that, there's new research that's out there that talks about up to the age of 35, and again, this is not my information. I'm passing it along to you. You can go and find it on the internet and read about it yourself. So I'm just trying to report what I think is statistically kind of important information to pass on in understanding self-healing, is that by age 35, everything prior to that is kind of our subconscious thinking, right? And from that point forward, and it's not written in stone or concrete or anything like that, but from that point forward, what we do with our lives, the way we think, act, and feel, which is our personality, is basically our subconscious, day after day after day after day. So, in other words, what we think about today is what we thought about yesterday and we thought about the day before. I believe the statistics around 90-95% of our day is in subconscious thought from previous day and days and weeks and months and years. So what we've been learning for 35 years actually just comes out over and over again, and our personality never changes. If our personality doesn't change, then our reality doesn't change, assuming you agree to the part that your personality has some aspect of what your reality looks like. So if we get up today, as they say, and we think the same thoughts, actions, and deeds, and blah, 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 as yesterday, nothing's any different. Our reality is not going to change, correct? Okay. So what we're suggesting here is that if we continue to live in the past, it's pretty difficult to change our personality to view the future and in a more healing sort of manner. Okay? So what we're trying to do in self-healing is erase some of the thought process, subconscious, that was in the past that was causing our lives to have some disease or sickness or illness, be it mental health and or regular physical type illnesses. So if we grew up, let's take this scenario, I talked a little bit about it last time. If we grew up in a dysfunctional home, family, environment with parent or parents or others around that modeled dysfunction, stress, disease, addiction, compulsive disorders, depression, maybe somebody in the family was physically sick with a cancer or something, whatever the case might be. Okay, we learned that. That's kind of like learned behavior, right? So we learn from watching them the way that they model their illness, that's who we are. That comes forward up to that age 35 process that I'm talking about. And it's not used to be thought of as genetic. Okay, used to be genetic process. Well, if my father had emphysema, I'm going to have emphysema. Well, that's not true. If my mother had diabetes, then I'm going to have diabetes. Well, that's not true. And I mentioned some of these names week after week, but again, Dr. Bruce Lipton, I believe, is the leading person on epigenetics, which is um, we no longer go with the theory of things are genetic and it's passed down from generation to generation. Not true. What is passed down from is the environment we grew up in, be it dysfunctional, and the modeling behavior that we learned in that. So it's important for us. I'm just trying to figure that part out. So it's important for us to, by age 35 and forward, to look at what our personalities uh, give us in reality. In other words, have we turned somewhat depressed? Have we turned to an anxiety disorder of some kind? Have we taken on some sort of physical illness, by age 35 or thereafter? And if so, are you willing to look at how to get rid of and erase some of that stuff so that you can put in better scripts, better scientific information in order to maybe eliminate and heal some of that? So let's take, for instance, I've got some of this written down that's kind of interesting, but if you grew up in a dysfunctional family and there was a lot of chaos going on in your life, people were depressed, they might have been anxious, they might have had hypertension, might have been diabetes, might have been cancers, who knows what it is. That's a lot of stress for you as a young person to experience, and the probability is great that you take that forward all the way through your life. And in this case, we're talking about up to age 35, where it gets pretty much set in stone. And what you're doing there is you're taking your adrenal glands, right? And you're firing off, we talked a little bit about this last week, but you're firing off, stress hormones. Um, Cortisol is a stress hormone that gets fired off. It has to do a little bit with fight or flight. And the example they give is when an animal, over in Africa is chased by a lion or whatever, fight or flight comes in and they run and try to get away from the lion so they don't get killed. The lion backs off for whatever reason, the animal, zebra, or whatever. In 10 or 15 minutes, the stress hormones are gone and it's back grazing. Humans are not quite like that. Humans are more so, they carry that around for a long period of time. That might be hours, days, weeks, months, years. And if you carry those stress hormones and you're firing them off 24/7, right? Disease, as they say, is going to find you. Now, that might be physical disease, that might be mental health disease, I'm not sure. But if you're firing off stress hormones, and again, we're talking about cortisol, which also affects blood pressure. I believe it causes some constriction there, which leads to hypertension. Um, Adrenaline is another one, that gets fired off on a regular basis. If you're growing up and becoming an adult and you're continuously living in a survival mode, you become depressed, you become anxious, you become hypertensive, you pick up another physical disease or something. You're living in a survival mode. And your stress hormones are being fired off all the time. So So now we get to the age of 35, right? And we realize all that kind of stuff. And we have a choice what to do at that point. In psychology, in the past, when I was practicing and seeing clients and whatever, we used to try to erase that kind of thought process and put in healthier thoughts to where we have I guess they call them happy hormones or something. Um, the happy hormones are the things that drive us and motivate us and make our lives better. You know, the dopamines, for instance, the endorphins, oxytocin, serotonin, you know, those kinds of hormones are considered happy hormones because they do good things to our systems. They prevent uh, our immune system to weaken, it actually strengthens, and we now go in the opposite direction from disease, again, being it physical or emotional. So, so we get on down the road and we decide that our reality is not good. Things are getting worse. We're stuck in this depression. We have this intense anxiety, generalized anxiety, whatever it happens to be. We've now led into hypertension. What do you do? What do you do at that point? So the and again, I'm not a doctor, nor am I a scientist, and I'm just trying to present in layman's terms my understanding is that there's neurons, right? Neural transmitters in our brain, and they hook together and they bond, right? And those bonds that we have up to age 35 may not be healthy ones. So we need to learn how to disconnect the negative neurons, neural transmitters, and put in new thought. And where new neurons connect with new neurons, and eventually, if you think those thoughts enough, they become a connection. And now you've replaced new thought with old thought. So if 95% of our day is spent thinking thoughts of yesterday and the past, which we're assuming at this point is negative and harmful, and if we're able to put in new thoughts through a process, right, and form new connections with our neurons, then we're erasing disease, so to speak, mental health or or just physical disease. We're starting to erase that stuff, and we're starting to put in new thought. 5% of our day is actually available for a creative process to where we can get healthy and well and go on with our lives and live happily ever after and die of old age, not die of disease. And if we're stuck in the past with our thoughts, then it's hard for us to use the 5% because we're constantly trying to survive. Okay? So on the internet, there's, who's the guy? Dr. Joe Dispenza. He has a process. Very brilliant guy. Has a great program. I can say that I've watched every video he has and every workshop that's on the internet and every interview, and I'm trying to work his program. I don't have the money to go to his actual workshop, um, but I would like to sometime, you know, that would be great. But he has a specific process for how to do that. And the second half of this video, which I'm going to get to here in a moment, is going to talk about that process and where I am on week 4 of trying to make things healthier in my life. So what we need to do is, if our personality is how we think, act, and feel, right? And that produces our reality, right? And if our personality is unhealthy and causing a weakness in our immune system, disease is going to come and find us. So as we start working through the steps, the process to change our personality, become another person, become another me, a healthier me, then disease is not going to come and find me. All right? So there's an interesting thing here. I want to read this because I don't have it memorized. My apologies for that. But this part, neuroplasticity, and again, all you scientists and doctors and everything, you can laugh at me if you want, but I'm just a layman just trying to interpret this stuff. But this really makes sense. It talks about the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neurotransmitter connections throughout life. So the brain has that ability to do that. That's the brain's ability to change the neurotransmitters. Neuroplasticity allows the neurons, that's the nerve cells, in the brain to compensate for injury and disease. It doesn't specify whether that's physical, mental, or physical and mental, but I go with it's both. And to adjust their activities of the neurons, in other words, taking the neurons that have connections already apart and putting new neurons together that have the healthy stuff. Adjust their activities in response to new situations, the way we view reality, the way our personality now has changed because we're using the 5% that's more creative than going with the 95% of thought that's all subconscious from the past, or to change their environment. Okay, that's kind of pretty important stuff, and that's the direction that I'm going, and that's the direction this series of videos is going to go. We're talking about how thought alone can alter your physical and mental health. Thought alone. And I maintain, many years ago when I was doing clinical psychology, I was teaching this stuff, but teaching it under different words and terms and whatnot. And, if a person can accept, believe, and surrender to a concept that's healthier than where they've been, there's a good chance that they can heal themselves. And in the weeks to come, again, I hope you subscribe to my videos. These are all on YouTube. I'm also putting them on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter for those people that do have some connection with me that might see them there. So anyway, that's the direction we're going. Next week, what I'm going to try to talk a little bit about is brain waves and meditation and how all of that connects to self-healing. That's really a critical step in the whole process. So I hope that you pay attention to that one next week. The second half of today's video is about my progress with my hypertension. My hypertension is a result of I'm not a doctor, but I've seen enough cardiologists to know that they don't have an answer for what hypertension is. My hypertension is clearly having grown up in a dysfunctional family. I'm sure a lot of people have, and firing off, the stress hormones very young in life, 24/7 for many, 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 many years. And the hypertension is a result of my weakened immune system and the cortisol and the adrenaline and all that stuff, fight or flight, led to some depression here and there, led to some anxiety here and there. And now I'm in the process of eliminating all of that. I'm eliminating all of the disease and negative effects that my environment and the people that I grew up around modeled for me. I did not get any of this stuff from genetics. It didn't come from my family. It just didn't. It's epigenetics. Go read Bruce Lipton's research. Um, that's where it came from. So what I've been doing is I've been doing meditation. I've always done meditation, but I'm doing it different now. I'm trying to follow the model that Joe Dispenza gives. And again, I hope someday to have enough money to go to one of his workshops and actually learn the correct procedure in doing this. But, what I've been doing is just going through all the different parts of my body, working through each muscle, tissue, vein, artery, organ, and just trying to focus on if there's any blockages, if there's any constrictions, if things are open, if blood is flowing well, if blood is not flowing well. And what I come up with, it's kind of interesting. That whole process takes me about 45 minutes to do every day. But what's been interesting is that the adrenal glands, that let out the cortisol and the adrenaline, two of the stress hormones. I'm trying now to focus on those two glands and to try to quiet them, shut them down, as well as the stress hormones. I'm trying to stop the release of that stuff. By doing that, I have to focus in my meditations about, how would I say it, that I'm not under as much stress as I imagine myself to be, and that my depression is less than what I visualize and sense in my reality, and my anxiety is less than what I imagine. So now I've added another component to my meditation, and that has to do with the adrenal glands and pituitary gland a little bit there too. And I'm trying to shut down the best I can the stress hormones, and I'm trying to intensify and strengthen the release of, the happy hormones, the dopamine, the oxytocin, all of those kinds of things. That's what I'm working on now. Progress report as of my 4th week. My blood pressure is not any better. It really hasn't gone down. It's actually gone up a couple notches on both, systolic and diastolic. Maybe I'm trying too hard. I'm not sure. But as of week 4, my diligence and perseverance in working on these meditations, I'm not getting the results that I thought I would. Again, I'm sure I'm probably not doing them correctly, and I hope to continue doing more research and eventually attend a workshop where I can learn the exact technique that I need to use. I accept, believe, and surrender. It will work. I have no doubt in my mind about that. So that's kind of this week's presentation. I know I'm running long again, and I don't know, they get mad at me when I do that, but I'm self-supporting. Every week I say the same thing. I don't survive without money. I don't care how much. Send something to my PayPal account, jzager@gmail.com, jzegar @gmail.com. If anybody would like to have me kind of as a novice in this particular area, but in the area of mental health and clinical psychology and the research I've been doing, there's 43 years of this kind of stuff. I mean, let me loose. Let me talk to these people. Let me do a little workshop. Let me do a little presentation. Contact me through email. Call me up. I'm on all I'm easy to contact, easy to find, and I'll make it happen. I'll make it happen for us. So I look forward to that. So again, thanks for attending again this week, and I will be diligent in getting my information ready for you next week. I will continue to do my meditations, and again, send me some money so I can go to these workshops. I need to learn more. I want to learn more, and just bless everybody. And I look forward to seeing you guys all next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.